Hello, this is Greg Allison with Green Greg. I bought somebody else's fishing worms that's for sale, and I'm going to try to hide their name where you can't really see who it is. But here's what's interesting. It says fat, juicy redworms. Now redworms, there should be, especially for fishing worms, should be of a certain size. Now I think y'all have seen my worms in my videos. My worms are pretty good size. But let's see. It says 30. Guys, look at this. Here they are. Well, there's one that ain't too bad in here. That's a smallish. That's probably the biggest one we're gonna find in here. That's one. That's nearly dead. He's really small. Okay, we're hunting worms here, guys. Two worms so far. Are you serious? That's a dead worm. Does that count? Wow. This was $5 and change for taxes. It was $4.95. Oh hey, I guess these are $2.50 a worm. Little bitty worms. Holy walking smoke-a-moly, guys. Ha! No, that's not a worm. Normally the way you harvest them, you let them go down. There ain't no worms in here. Well, I don't know, is that fat? Is that juicy? Two worms. Wait. That ain't remnant of a worm. I thought there might be a remnant of a worm there. That's it, guys. That's it. A dead worm, an almost dead worm, and a tiny worm. If it has a smell to it. Don't smell like dead worms. These worms will die and you get a stink. So, I don't know, guys. That's pretty pitiful in my book. That's pretty pitiful. That surprises me. I really thought there'd be at least 10 or 15 of them in here. 30. Said 30. Well, guys, you got to be careful when you're buying your worms. You got to be careful. A lot of places sell that for worm castings. That's peat moss. That ain't worm castings, guys. I see that in a lot of these bagged worm castings. What's supposed to be bagged worm castings? I'm just looking for remnants of worms now. See any sign of that worms from days gone by. Wow. There you are, guys. There you are. Up. Wait a minute. There is one in here. One little bitty dead worm. Pitiful. Alright, we got four worms. That's just a piece of debris. A couple sticks. I don't know, guys. That's pretty pathetic. What do you think? I'm going to start selling some fishing worms here locally. Wow, that's a competition. That's nothing. That's nothing. Guys, if y'all can't sell worms for $2.50 a cup, sell real worms, I don't know what you're doing. And you should be able to get, I'd put 40 worms in a cup that size. Yes, sirree. At least 30. Wow, guys, it said 30 on the box. Let's see if I can cover up the name and find where it says. Approximately 3 inches. Approximately 3 inches. 30. Fancy label, but not fancy worms. I don't know, guys, that's pretty pathetic. What do you think? Let's look at this one worm now. You know, guys, this ain't even a mature worm. There's no clitellum on them. And what do you think, kitty cat? You think that's pretty pitiful? Yeah, cat agrees. There's only one viable worm in this whole package. All right, if y'all want to pay $5 for a worm, that's something. Yeah, I've been hearing a lot of these packages would have like 10 worms in them. This don't even have that. Oh well. There you have it, guys. If you want to sell worms, you certainly can beat that. Pretty pathetic. Pretty pathetic. Anyway, there you are. Buy worms. Go to greengregs.com. Buy worms. Sell worms. You can do well in your local neighborhood selling worms. I guarantee you. Guarantee you. Guarantee you. What do you think, Kit?
So raising worms for bait is actually a great idea because worms raised for bait sell more, retail more per pound, and you can get a pretty wide market for it, and you can just distribute them to local stores, to hardware stores, to various and sundry places. There's a big demand for bait worms during the fishing season, which is pretty wide, pretty broad. So that's not a bad deal. So here's what you need to know if you want to get bait worms. First off, like I say, you can raise them like you'd raise worms normally to sell for gardeners or whatever. You can have the X number of worm bins, 5 to 10 cubic yards would be quite a bit actually. And I think you could do quite well from that. But now I have had people buy worms from me and just resell them directly as bait worms. I mean, they might fatten them up a little bit before they'd sell them. But you get pretty big worms from me to start with, bigger than what you saw in that cup. But I do run them bed runs, so you get a mix of babies and large ones. You don't want to separate out to the large ones or provide extra content if you don't want to spend the labor to separate them. And actually, it's still a pretty good deal anyway. You slice it. Instead of getting them 30 worms, you might give them 40 or 50 in that case. But, that's not a big deal, and you could do that. And my worms do tend, since I screen them now, to be a little bit spectrally more on the larger side. So it's not fully all sizes, but it still is. All right, so let me show you something. On the idea of somebody coming in and just buying worms directly and reselling them, which I've had people buy them from me and do just that. I had a lady that's done it for quite some time. She lived in an apartment in Oregon, and near Eugene, Oregon. And actually, she did quite well with her original apartment owners, which knew what she was doing and didn't have any problem with it, but they sold out. The new owners didn't like it, so they kicked her out. So you might want to make sure you have a good understanding with whoever you deal with. She had a whole bedroom set up for this, by the way. And she would get them from me, and she'd fatten them up a little bit and resell them. I've had people, though, that just directly resold them. Especially bait outfitters too, and fishing outfitters who do like take people on fishing trips. I've had them as customers. So let me show you real quick just a couple of parameters for that. Again, I do sell worms, and if you're going to buy worms from me, come in here to greengregs.com, greengregs.com. And to buy the worms, you can either click up here, buy worms, or you can click down here to buy worms. That's pretty evident, right? And if you want to learn how to raise your worms, there's a whole series of videos. It goes pretty much in the order and progression you need for the knowledge you need to develop your wormery. And that's right here, vermiculture videos. Now, if you come here to buy worms, let's say, Greg, buying worms directly from you and reselling them as bait. Yeah, that's actually not a bad proposition. Because if you come in here and say bought a pound of worms, if you bought a pound of worms, what you would discover is that a pound of worms, typically with mine, since they're run mixed adults, you might get 1,400 to 1,800, not 17 something is typical worms per pound. 1,700, I believe, is 1640, 1740 range. That's been pretty typical with what comes out. So you get some little ones mixed in. If they were all adults, it'd be 1,000 worms per pound. That's what people usually go by for redworms. If it had a lot more juveniles, you can get 4,000 worms per pound. So it all depends on the ratio of juveniles to adults. I get that question asked a lot, and it does depend. It sometimes depends on how we harvest and run them. But from the counts we've had, that's what's typical. Now, so if you bought a pound of worms from me at $54, for example, it's not a bad deal. Now, bear in mind, 1,000 worms, if you were serving 30 worms per, if you divided 1,000 by 30, what you get is 33.33 partitions out of it. Let's say you just sold 30 worms out of that. So you got a pound of meat, $54, and you sold 30 worms. So what would, or 30 cups of worms? Or actually, you'll sell more, but let's just say we're doing this to discount the price of the cups. Okay. I'm just trying to knock out some of the price. I'm looking more for what you would expect to make. So if you had 1,000 worms, and if you sold them, divided that by 30 in this case, like multiplied by, let's say, $2.50, guys. Let's say if you're making $2.50 per cup. Now, the person that bought those worms, the store that got those worms that I showed in this video, bought them for $2.60. And look, the worms ahead. Wasn't much to say for it, right? So 30 times 2.5 is $75. Now, you might charge a little more to make up the cup price. Cup prices are going to run you something on order. It depends on how many you buy. Maybe 23 cents or less, again, depending on volume. So that's not much. You put a little peat moss in there, that costs you a little bit. But again, that's not much. But you can make something on the order $70 to $75 pretty easy. Now, if you were buying my $54 worms, what that would be is minus 54. You'd be making $21. Just maybe fatten them up a little bit. And it wouldn't take long to do that. Worms mature. Worms reproduce every 2 months. So it shouldn't take more than a month to get every worm I sold you big enough to sell in a cup. A couple of weeks maybe. So, and you can pick the bigger ones out and then keep growing the little ones. That's another way to do it. So, like I said, if you take 75 minus 54, that is again $21. That is not bad. That's not bad for immediate profit. But what happens if you say you come down here to my bottom one and bought 20 pounds? Now, I wouldn't be buying 20 pounds of worms unless you knew you had your market and you had everything worked out. But 20 pounds of worms comes out to about $38.75 a pound. You can see that's per pound a lot cheaper if you buy the bigger volume. Well, then if you took $75 and took it up to $38.75, you made $36.25 per pound. Now that is good. That's actually some money. So that is not bad at all. And in fact, so you'd be, on a per cup basis, if you took $36.25, which is what you'd make for that pound, and if you divided that by 30, you say we're selling 30 cups out of it, you probably sell 33 actually. Then that's like $1.20. You make at least $1 a cup. I've known the bait runner, the lady I bought my worms from was actually selling hers to bait runner for about $1.25 a cup. And she did that. Now you can sell to bait runners in addition, not run them out yourself. But that was like 11 years ago. So I'm sure you could beat that, with the bait runners these days, especially with worms being as rare as are. You should get $2 a cup, even a bait runner, I would think. So yeah, I would really push that as far as I could. But even $2 a cup, that's pretty darn good too. So you got some options there, a lot to work with. But the biggest thing I would say is buy, a lot of people actually do want to just buy and resell directly. They may not have the room or the time. They don't want to invest as much into growing the worms fully out. I get that, and that's okay. And that's a perfectly reasonable business model. I've had a few enduring customers who did just that for some time. Of course, we stopped selling for a couple of years. I've lost contact with a couple of those individuals since then, but I'm expecting that to come back online. It's something you can do, but I would advise you, if you got the room, to try to raise them out and also sell worms to gardeners and sell locally, sell your compost, the worm castings, especially in worm tea. There's really good markets for that. These are all things you can do to enhance your market and give you a chance to make some money. I would say you could do really good on 10 cubic yards a year. I'm going to go more into that in the future. I've covered that in a steer a year video where I showed 5 worm beds, 4 by 8 worm beds, and what you could expect to get out of that, guys. So selling bait worms would be amazing. Selling bait worms, if you grew them out yourself, then it's all profit, which says, hey, if you could get a 30 harvest, out of a pound, times the 2.5, 2.5 is, then you're making the $75 I was talking about per pound. 27 times, I'm going to say 5. Okay, it's 135 pounds of worms. 27 times 5 is 135 pounds of worms for a cubic yard. So we'll say we're going to harvest 5 cubic yards, but we're going to keep 10 cubic yards so we can harvest half of it. Then we replenish it. So you harvest 135 pounds about every 8 weeks, divided by 8. So you'll be getting 16 pounds, 16.8. We'll round that down to 16. We'll say 16 pounds of worms per week times 30 cups That's 480 cups times 2.5. That's $1,200 a week just in worms, times 52 is $62,400. Since I expect you to make as much money from the compost and worm tea, you could actually get by with 5 cubic yards, probably, depending on how much money you're trying to earn. I wouldn't go over 10. You know, be honest. This way you could scale your operation where you can run it by yourself. So there you go. This is the best advice you're going to get on the internet for worm raising. I'll go more details. I'm going to do a course on this stuff in the future. I will go into more details on this. So there you are, guys. And I'll put it all together into a nice package when I do the course. But you can make a living, $62,400 a year. Of course, you got to make up for the wintertime. You can probably sell them as garden worms. It's going to vary. But you've also got the impact, the potential impact of, you know, you can sell the worm compost, the worm tea. Guys, there's no reason you couldn't make $75,000 a year if you do it right and if you got the market. So it's just something you can work on. 50, if you can't make $50,000 a year, you're on this. Yeah, and I would do all raised bed. I'd do the beds like my sled beds, something out of the ground, totes or something like that. I've done videos on how to make those things. I find those are the best mold-proof beds I've had, and if you put them on skids, you can move them around. A lot of advantages, especially if you're on rental property and you need to move to some other place, then you can take your worm beds with you. They're not built into the ground. So there you go, my friends. That is your ticket to ride, your ticket to paradise and Wormeryville. I'll put a link to this in the video. You can buy these blue plastic cups. This is the hardest thing to find. I'm going to give you this link for free. Got Trading Post, vending.com, and I'll actually send you the whole link to this. These cups are the key to selling the worms. There's 12-ounce cups. You get the cups and the lids together. 100 count is $23.16. That's why I said it'll cost you 23 cents a piece. Put a little peat moss in them. If you want to go through and do the exact math and work that out, I'll do all that in my course. I'm just talking gross numbers here. But guys, this is the potential. Now, I'm not saying you're going to earn this. This is what the potentials are. Okay, guys? So that's my disclaimer. I'm not saying that you're going to earn X dollars a year if you do this, but I'm telling you what the potentials are. It all depends on, did you take care of your worms right? Do you have your market? And just, did moles get in your beds and eat all your worms up? I can't guarantee that won't happen. If you build your worm beds right, you ought to be able to keep the moles out. Right now, my most successful worm bed in that regard is those sled beds. The sled beds have turned out, you know, I really didn't know if that was going to work out for me. Now, maybe you live in an area where that don't work out for you for other reasons, but I've shown you several different ways to build worm beds, and I will do more. There's more coming than that on my channel. So if you're not subscribed to my channel, subscribe, bang that notification bell, and click all. And you can help me and help yourself too by coming here and buying worms from me. Again, you can just click the Buy Worms tab when you first get on my page. And that other tab, come in here and order worms, or you can donate to me if you so choose, if you support my cause in general. Maybe you don't want worms right now. You can buy worms here. You can click buy worms up there. Either case, it takes you to the same page. Scroll down, and there it is. If you are local, you can come down here and do a local pickup. That's the price list. And I just asked before you click on these buttons, a lot of you move around a lot and you change your address with PayPal, but you probably just changed your billing address and not your shipping address. I don't know how many times, it's almost every week, I get something where the guy changed his billing address, but forgot to change his mailing address, and the worms go the wrong place. Or they panic after they realized they ordered and the address was wrong. So guys, don't get in that. Please go check your PayPal mailing address. And if you can't send me, if you don't have a credit card or PayPal account, you know, you should be able to pay with a credit card through PayPal. I don't think they take debit cards. You can send me a check or money order to the address at the bottom of the screen right here. Right there. Send a check or money order to that address. I should probably put that at the top of the page here to make sure people understand that. All right, my friends, that's what you need to know to grow and have your own little wormery, your own little worm business. It don't take a lot of room, guys. 10 cubic yards is small. 5 cubic yards, you can do a lot with 5 cubic yards. I wouldn't make Today it's so hard to hire people. I would not go for a big outfit like I've got here. If I had to do over again, I wouldn't do that. But it's what I got. So this way you can have something a whole lot less headache than having to hire a bunch of people these days. You can work it at your leisure, and it becomes easy to work business. Great retirement business or a good income. So you could do a lot with it. Anyway, my friends, enough said. Well, that I'm gonna say thank you and Greg out.